Okay, guys, buckle up because today we're diving into one of the most unhinged power trips in human history. Picture this. You are so drunk on power that regular humans aren't challenging enough anymore. So you decided to literally declare war on the ocean. Meet Caligula, the Roman emperor who looked at the Mediterranean Sea and said, "You know what? I am going to fight Neptune himself." And then he actually did it with an entire Roman legion, armed with swords and spears against water. This isn't some fever dream. This actually happened in 40 AD, and it is about to become your new favorite toxic boss story. This is wacky history first. Let's set the scene. We're talking about Caligula, whose real name was Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, but everyone called him Caligula, which literally means little boots because he wore tiny military sandals as a kid. Already off to a great start with that nickname. This dude became emperor of Rome at age 24, which is like giving a college senior the nuclear codes and saying, "have fun," for the first few months. Everyone thought he was going to be the cool young CEO who brings Pizza Fridays to the empire. Plot twist, absolute power absolutely corrupted him. And he went full supervillain faster than you could say, main character syndrome. By 40 AD, Caligula had already declared himself a living god, made his horse a consul, basically a senator. We'll talk about this story later. It is so classic. Haha. Besides that, he built a floating bridge across the Bay of Naples just so he could ride across it wearing Alexander the Great's breastplate. This man had zero chill and infinite resources. A dangerous combination, but apparently terrorizing humans wasn't enough anymore. Caligula needed a bigger challenge. And that is when he looked at the ocean and thought, you know what has been disrespecting me? The literal sea. So here's what happened. Caligula was planning to invade Britain, which meant crossing the English Channel. But the weather wasn't cooperating, and his troops were getting nervous about the whole sailing across dangerous waters to fight barbarians thing. Any normal leader would either wait for better weather or maybe reconsider the invasion, but Caligula, this man took it personally. In his mind, the ocean wasn't just being difficult, it was actively defying him. Remember, this is a guy who genuinely believed he was a god. So when the sea didn't cooperate with his invasion plans, he saw it as Neptune, the Roman god of the sea, basically sliding into his DMs with disrespect. Caligula's logic was flawless. I am a god, Neptune's a god. Therefore, this is a fair fight. Time to show this aquatic wannabe who is really running things around here. He gathered his legions on the beaches of Gaul, modern-day France, and gave what might be the most insane military briefing in history. Boys, change of plans. We're not invading Britain today, we're gonna war with the ocean itself. The most ridiculous military operation ever. Picture this scene. Thousands of fully armed Roman soldiers, the most disciplined military force in the ancient world, standing on a beach in full battle gear, staring at the waves like they're about to drop the hottest diss track of 40 AD. Caligula, probably wearing his fanciest purple robes and golden laurel crown, points dramatically at the Mediterranean and shouts something like, "Neptune, you have disrespected the wrong emperor." Then he gives the order that would make this moment legendary: attack the sea. And these professional soldiers, guys who had conquered most of Europe, had to stand there and follow orders to literally stab water with their swords. Imagine being a Roman centurion trying to explain this to your troops. "Okay, men, today we're fighting the ocean." Yes, the entire ocean. "No, I don't know how we're supposed to win. Just start stabbing the waves and hope for the best." The soldiers threw their spears into the surf, slashed at the incoming waves with their swords, and basically had the world's most expensive and pointless water fight. Some sources say they even shot arrows at the sea, because apparently Caligula wanted to make sure Neptune got the full Roman military experience. After what was probably several hours of grown men in armor fighting the tide, Caligula declared victory. Because of course he did. The waves kept coming, but in his mind that was just Neptune surrendering. "We have conquered the sea," he probably announced while his soldiers stood there dripping wet and questioning their life choices. But here is where it gets even more ridiculous. Every good Roman victory needed war spoils. You can't just defeat an enemy and come home empty-handed. That is not how the empire works. So Caligula ordered his troops to collect the spoils of war from their epic battle against Neptune. And what were these precious spoils? Seashells. Literally just seashells from the beach. Picture thousands of battle-hardened Roman legionaries, Guys who had looted actual cities and brought back gold and slaves, now crawling around on their hands and knees picking up shells like they're at a kindergarten beach day. They had to fill their helmets with seashells and carry them back to Rome as proof of their emperor's great victory over the ocean. These soldiers had probably seen some weird stuff in their military careers, but this was definitely going in their strangest day at work Hall of Fame. When Caligula returned to Rome with his army and their helmets full of seashells, he threw himself a triumph, the Roman equivalent of a victory parade. Imagine the scene. The most powerful man in the world riding through the streets of Rome in a golden chariot while his soldiers marched behind him carrying beach souvenirs. The Roman people, who were used to seeing their legions return with actual treasure and prisoners of war, now had to watch grown men parade around with seashells while their emperor declared he had personally defeated Neptune in combat. Caligula probably gave a speech about how these shells were proof of the sea god's surrender and how Rome now controlled all the world's ocean. The crowd had to stand there and cheer for this madness because, criticizing the emperor was a quick way to become lion food. He reportedly displayed these seashells in his palace like they were the crown jewels, telling visitors about his epic naval victory. Oh, these old things. Just some trophies from when I conquered the entire ocean. No big deal. From a modern perspective, this whole episode screams mental health crisis meets unlimited power. Caligula had basically become the ultimate toxic boss, the kind of guy who would fire someone for bringing him the wrong coffee. Except instead of firing people, he could have them executed. The seashell incident perfectly captures how power can warp someone's reality. In Caligula's mind, he wasn't just the emperor of Rome. He was a god who could command nature itself. When reality didn't match his expectations, he didn't adjust his expectations. He declared war on reality. This is like if Elon Musk decided that gravity was personally insulting him and ordered all Tesla employees to jump really hard to defeat physics, except Caligula actually had the power to make people do it. The fact that his soldiers went along with this shows the terrifying efficiency of authoritarian systems. These weren't stupid people. They were professional military officers who knew this was insane, but the alternative to following orders was probably death. So they stabbed the ocean and collected seashells like their lives depended on it. Unsurprisingly, Caligula's war against Neptune didn't solve any of Rome's actual problem. The British invasion was cancelled, the empire's resources were wasted on this bizarre beach performance, and everyone involved probably needed therapy. But the story became legendary precisely because it was so ridiculous. Even in ancient Rome, people knew this was crazy. Historians like Suetonius recorded it not as a great military victory, but as evidence of Caligula's complete break from reality. The seashell triumph became a symbol of how absolute power can turn anyone into a cartoon villain. It has been referenced by writers and philosophers for nearly 2,000 years as the ultimate example of imperial madness. Modern historians debate whether Caligula was genuinely mentally ill or just drunk on power. But either way, the seashell incident shows what happens when there are no checks and balances on authority. When nobody can tell you no, eventually you end up declaring war on the ocean. This story isn't just ancient history. It is a masterclass in how power corrupts and how organizations enable crazy behavior when there is no accountability. Think about modern corporate culture. How many times have you seen a CEO make obviously terrible decisions and everyone just goes along with it because they're afraid to speak up? Caligula's Seashell War is just the extreme version of that dynamic. The Roman soldiers who stabbed the ocean weren't stupid. They were trapped in a system where questioning authority meant death. Sound familiar? It is the same reason people stay quiet in toxic workplaces or abusive relationships. The story also shows how dictators create their own reality bubbles. Caligula surrounded himself with people who told him what he wanted to hear, so his increasingly bizarre behavior seemed normal to him. When everyone's afraid to give you honest feedback, you can convince yourself that declaring war on Neptune is a reasonable Tuesday afternoon activity. Spoiler alert. Caligula's reign didn't last much longer after the seashell incident. In 41 AD, just a year later, he was assassinated by his own Praetorian Guard. Basically, his secret service decided they'd had enough of his nonsense. The assassination happened in a tunnel under his palace, and according to sources, his final words were something like, "I am still alive," which is both tragic and kind of fitting for a guy who thought he could fight the ocean. After his death, the Roman Senate tried to erase his memory from history. They destroyed his statues, canceled his building projects, and basically tried to pretend the whole seashell emperor thing never happened. But the story was too good to forget. His successor, Claudius, had to spend years undoing Caligula's damage and convincing people that the Roman Empire was still a serious political entity, not a reality show run by a madman with a shell collection. Today, Caligula's war against Neptune is remembered as one of history's greatest examples of power-induced insanity. The image of Roman soldiers stabbing the ocean has become a meme before memes existed, a perfect symbol of pointless authority and wasted resources. The story has inspired countless works of art, literature, and political commentary. Whenever someone wants to illustrate the dangers of unchecked power, they bring up the emperor who made his army fight the sea and collect seashells as war trophies. In a weird way, Caligula achieved a kind of immortality through this ridiculous act. Most Roman emperors are forgotten by everyone except history nerds, but almost everyone has heard of the crazy emperor who declared war on the ocean. The seashells themselves probably ended up in some Roman garbage dump, but the story lives on as a reminder that no matter how powerful you become, you can't actually fight nature, and trying to do so just makes you look ridiculous for all eternity. Caligula's Seashell War is the ultimate cautionary tale about what happens when someone gets too much power and zero reality checks. This man literally looked at the ocean, and said, "I can take you." The fact that thousands of professional soldiers had to go along with this madness shows how dangerous it is when authority becomes absolute. These guys probably went home to their families like, "Honey, you are not going to believe what I had to do at work today." But there is also something almost admirable about the sheer audacity of it all. In a world full of boring politicians and corporate speak, at least Caligula committed to the bit. When he decided to be crazy, he went full crazy. No half measures, no focus groups, just pure unhinged emperor energy. The next time your boss makes you do something stupid, just remember, at least they're not making you stab the ocean and collect seashells as proof of victory. And if they are, maybe it is time to update your resume. This is the story of Caligula, the emperor who was so drunk on power that he declared war on Neptune himself and somehow convinced an entire Roman legion to help him fight the sea. It is ridiculous, it is tragic, and it is absolutely true. Because sometimes the craziest stories in history are the ones that actually happened. Subscribe to Wacky History for more tales of historical madness. Next week, the Chinese emperor who tried to become immortal by eating mercury pills. Spoiler alert, it didn't work out great for him.